and welcome. You're watching NewsX with me, Devika Chopra. At least 15 people have been killed and dozens have been injured when a driver rammed a pickup truck into a crowd on Bourbon Street in New Orleans on New Year's Day. The FBI is investigating the attack as an act of terrorism and has said that it doesn't think that the driver was solely responsible. The suspect is a man called Shamsuddin Jabbar, who has been killed in a fight with cops. He had an ISIS flag in the vehicle at the time of the attack. The first visuals show you the moment at which the pickup truck hit a crowd of people. Have a look at that. That's the visual on your screens right there, viewers. That's the moment when the pickup truck literally rammed into people on a crowded street because, of course, it was New Year's Day. Let's keep that visual on the screen. Then I'm going to request our crew to also now put out our touchpads on the screen. If we can just split the visual with the touchpad so that I can take our viewers through what it is that the investigative agency is then put together. And I'm currently looking at the FBI's page on X, also the page of the you don't have to keep me on screen, please. You can put me aside. Let's show the visuals clearly and let's show what was put out by the FBI. This is the specific page of the FBI for New Orleans specifically, and this statement was put out, viewers, 19 hours ago, within a few hours of the attack. The FBI wrote, "This morning, an individual drove a car into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing a number of people and injuring dozens of others. The subject then engaged with local law enforcement and is now deceased. The FBI is the lead investigative agency and we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism." So within a few moments, within a few hours, of this particular attack, the FBI, of course, took over the investigation and it was determined that this was an act of terrorism. At least 15 people were killed when this person decided to take his truck over people who were simply celebrating New Year's. Then this was further put out by the FBI. This is, of course, on their official page. On your screens is right now a recent photograph of the suspect. The FBI wrote, "The FBI continues investigating the horrific attack on innocent victims on Bourbon Street in New Orleans in the early morning hours of 1st January 2025. The suspect has been identified as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. citizen from Texas. Attached is a more recent photograph of Jabbar. FBI special agents and our law enforcement partners are currently conducting a number of court-authorized search warrants in New Orleans and other states. The FBI's evidence response team continues to process the crime scene to meticulously gather all relevant evidence. The FBI plans to turn over the Bourbon Street crime scene to local authorities by early tomorrow morning," which has, of course, already happened by now. Remember, viewers, I'm just taking you through what the law enforcement agencies have put out on their respective pages. They've also said additional FBI resources, including victim specialists, are responding to assist victims and family members. But what they had found out in the initial probe was this photograph of Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. citizen from Texas, a 42-year-old man who is now deceased after engaging with cops in the aftermath of this terror attack. But this is what they had found out. Later on, this was put about 13 hours ago. Office of the LG, Dan Patrick, is the LG of Texas, the state to which this particular man Shamsuddin Jabbar belongs to. He says, "We have been working with law enforcement and Houston mayor on this issue. The New Orleans terror suspect has been living in the Houston area. He rented the Ford truck, which we can see in the CCTV visuals, on the 30th of December itself." Let's not let this confuse us. 12:30 in American terms means 30th of December. And we have learned that he was driving the rented truck in Houston before heading to New Orleans. This is an active investigation that continues to develop in both Louisiana and Texas. Please follow the FBI alert to avoid this particular area. This was put out by the Lieutenant Governor of Texas. He says, of course, authorities of both Texas and Louisiana are working together currently, but that was further information that was found out about the particular terror suspect, that he had in fact rented this white Ford truck that can be seen in the visuals on the 30th of December itself, and he was seen driving the rented truck in Houston before heading to New Orleans. He was also living in the Houston area. And this, of course, is one of the latest posts that has been put out by the New Orleans Police Department, which says that the FBI has set up a digital tip line and is asking anyone with information or video of the incident to submit it to them at www.fbi.gov/Bourbon Street attack or call on 1-800-CALL-FBI. So this is the latest that we're looking at. Viewers, I'm going to take this conversation forward. I have with me Major General G.G. Dwivedi, and we also have Dr. Monica Verma. But let me begin with Major General G.G. Dwivedi. Major General Dwivedi, of course, this is being now looked at as a terror attack, quite obviously. But at the same time, the law enforcement agencies feel that there could be more people involved in this particular attack. Given the way the terror attack was conducted, the fact that law enforcement agencies have found out that this man Shamshuddin Jabbar was posting material online, that he was inspired by the ISIS, that an ISIS flag was also found on the truck. As in your assessment, does this seem like a lone wolf attack, or could there be something larger behind it, a larger conspiracy? Because we have seen that this has somewhere become the new modus operandi as well. We no longer perhaps see very large terror attacks where bomb blasts are taking place, but we've seen in Europe specifically where there have been multiple knife attacks that have taken place, and we've also seen other such lone wolves driving their trucks and buses and cars through crowded streets. So it seems that this has become the new modus operandi of terrorists.
Absolutely, Devika, this is the new modus operandi. But before I give my comments, heartfelt condolences to the families who lost the near dear ones. 15 innocent lives have been lost by this reckless act of terrorism. So coming to the specific issue that we raised, well, at the face of it, it appears that it's a lone wolf attack, but it can't be ruled out as to who are the people behind. And as Shamsuddin Jabbar is known to be, or have been intimated information that he is a veteran, and he possibly was radicalized and he was flying ISIS flag. That means that he was under the influence of this terrorist organization, and during his stint in the army, maybe he has been radicalized. Now, here 3-4 issues are very important. As firstly, you rightly brought out that terrorists today are using different means and modes because it is not very easy to hide the guns or explosives. So they are picking up the vehicles and flying through mowing the crowds. And this has happened a couple of times now. Even in Germany, there was a similar such attack. So that is the first thing, that terrorists have changed their methods, their methodology, and also the modus operandi. The second point is that, people need to be screened, especially I would say the veterans, because US and other Western countries, they have a system of tour of duty, means people go for a short while, they are not so well trained or motivated or indoctrinated, and then they come under the influence of such organizations, and which actually is very dangerous for the society. The third is the law enforcement agencies. Here, of course, the terrorists has been eliminated and has been identified, but there need to be a greater vigilance, especially on the occasion like New Year's Eve, Christmas, or festival times, when people are on the streets and they are merrymaking is going on. Now, these are the times that such radical terrorists or the individuals, they find that very soft targets, and they are able to achieve their aim, or they are able to achieve whatever they intended to. And my last point is that we need to also bring in greater awareness among the people that such acts, they are vulnerable, and therefore there has to be greater vigilance among the individual and law enforcement agencies per se. So all I can say is that this is a new methodology being adopted. We've got to be now more aware of this, and such tactics, I think such incidences are not the last one. We can actually, this is a new normal, and we should be fully prepared for such eventualities, Devika.
Right, absolutely. So stay on with us because we have the second video that was also released, viewers, is from the same street at 3:15 a.m. on New Year's. The video shows the immediate aftermath of the New Orleans terror attack. There are bodies that are lying on the street. Of course, we have blurred those out for obvious reasons, but you can clearly see several things that are lying on the street. You can see that people are running around as well. There's absolute chaos that has happened in the aftermath, and cops are also running towards the crime scene, and of course people have dispersed from the streets. But you can see how this particular truck has rammed into not just people but also everything in its path. You can see dividers and several other equipment that was kept on the sides of the roads, that's all fallen, and there's complete chaos. So this is the second video of the New Orleans terror attack that was released. Unfortunately, all the dead bodies can also be seen here of the people who've lost their lives in that particular terror attack. Absolutely horrific what has happened in New Orleans on the first day of the new year. Let me quickly go across to Dr. Monica Verma as well. Dr. Verma, same question to you. Are these simply lone wolf attacks that are taking place, or could there be some sort of a larger conspiracy? Because there is an ISIS flag that has been found in the truck. The cops have already now scanned social media of this of the terrorist, and they found that he was consuming a lot of ISIS content, that he was posting content related to the ISIS as well. So does that indicate somewhere that perhaps there needs to now be, or rather our law enforcement agencies need to be extremely vigilant as far as online activity is concerned? Every time a knife attack happens or a similar attack happens where a car or a truck is just rammed into people on a busy street, it turns out that this person was radicalized online. So is that something, is that a new threat that not just America and Europe are facing, but the whole world needs to look into?
Well, Devika, thanks for your question. I first of all do not think it's a lone wolf attack, and the reason is because not one but two terror incidents. The other one has not been as strongly, presented as a terrorist incident yet. But there have been two explosions, two terror, I will still call them terrorist attacks in United States within span of hours. So one took place in Las Vegas, the other one has taken place in New Orleans, and both have very eerie similarities. Both have ex-US Army personnel, veterans, who were earlier serving the American Army, but now they are, it's being said that they were radicalized online. But getting hold of ISIS flag and having this kind of mentality, and despite serving in the, even being ex-personnel of the army, I don't think it's something which can take place in a highly securitized environment like the US, which it is. So I think the law and order machinery has got a very, very significant challenge now, because earlier, if the terrorists were using explosive, it was still easy to maybe use technology to identify who is making bombs, where these bombs are being kept, where the supply is coming from. But now, if every single vehicle can be turned into a potential terror attack or a weapon, or it can be potentially used to kill not just one or two people. Like the knife attack is still limited, the number of casualties that it will cause will still be limited, but just ramming vehicles into people is something, and that too in a short span of time. We've seen something similar happening in Germany on Christmas, and now we see that's happened in US as well. So I think this kind of trend is a very, very worrying trend, and I do not consider it as a lone wolf attack because someone who's earlier, I mean, someone who knows the psychology better would be able to comment on this. But as far as I read other material and I spoke to certain people who are aware, who are into counter extremist or counter terror operations, and they tell me that the kind of psychology that a person trained in military has, it's very easy to probably reverse their mindset, and rather than serving for the country's national interest, they can also be used by the terror forces. They can also kind of become a very ready soldier for the terrorist organizations across the world. In fact, ISIS and Al Qaeda, all of them, they publish tons of material online where anyone who wants to be a part of their cause can just easily read it, take certain pledges, maybe just post a video. We've seen so many ISIS people who have affinity for them, or people who carry a sympathy for them in India's Kerala as well, or Karnataka, or so many other modules that have been busted. So I think it's a fresh new challenge, these vehicles ramming into people. At the same time, I just want to make a very quick point here that, the Western society especially is not quite ready for this challenge. And the reason is because Islamists have penetrated the law and order machinery, the civil society, and the NGOs, and other such sections of the civil society in the Western world. And looking at that, it will be very difficult to pinpoint who could be a challenge to the national security in today's date, and it will be very difficult for the law enforcement agencies to go after someone who's showing symptoms of being a threat, or a potential terror attacker of tomorrow. So I think it's a big challenge, and my condolences for the victims. But I really hope that some sort of precedent is now set by the American states so that these attacks are not repeated.
Right, absolutely. Let's also put out the photograph now of the Ford truck that was used to carry out this particular attack as well. This is the truck that was used by the terrorists, and you can very clearly see in this truck gunshots as well. So you can see bullet marks right here at the back, a clear indication that of course, there was some sort of a to and fro that took place with the cops as well, who we saw rushing towards where the truck was ramming into people. So this is perhaps how the cops were able to get a hold of the entire situation as well. But Major General G.G. Dwivedi, the number of attacks that we've seen just in the past 48 hours or so, is it likely that America will be taking some sort of strict action or setting some sort of a precedent?
Well, first and foremost, let me say that it's very difficult to pinpoint such attacks because you have to go into detailed background check of the individuals, and especially the veterans who are released and who has been to the war front. Some of them also get certain stresses of the war, during the war zone. So they need to be, screened, and they are also vulnerable. And the second point is that you see, America has increased its, security apparatus after the 9/11, and I am a regular visitor to US, and I have seen that their systems are quite in place. But then the point is that security cannot be 100% foolproof. There is always a window where such elements can exploit. But the point is that the terrorists and the security agencies, they always, the battle, or the cat and mouse game, because I have operated in almost all type of insurgency terrorist affected areas, that you have to confront new realities. Now the new reality is the flying through the crowds using these heavy trucks. Now this is a new challenge because security forces today are better geared to take on the armed, terrorist or also explosive. But in this case, this individual, Jabbar, apparently was well prepared. He has reconnoitered the area. He has chosen the particular spot. He was carrying an automatic rifle, also exchanged fire with the security forces. Therefore, he was not a rookie. That means he is well hardened, well prepared for a skirmish, well prepared for a fight, and therefore I think such individuals, he could have done far greater damage if he had not been eliminated. So I think two things here come to my mind as a security expert, having handled these insurgencies, that we need to be fully prepared and rather be proactive to see how these new trends are emerging in the terrorism, what are the new techniques they are using, and secondly, also try to figure out the networks, because after all, online radicalization, you can always try through the cyber security measures to point out the kind of suspects or those people who are vulnerable, and people of certain ethnic or religion are more vulnerable, and they are more targeted, and therefore these agencies actually spot out the vulnerable people. So all I can say is that first and foremost, especially the veterans who have the skills to use firearms can use greater damage. When they are released, there should be a very proper screening and a check kept on those who possibly could be radicalized. And secondly, security forces also need to keep pace with the new terrorist techniques that are emerging. And lastly, public also has a full role to play, because each individual is responsible for their security, and therefore, so on such occasion in public places, I think security needs to be enhanced and further tightened up. Devika.
Right, absolutely. At the same time, we also have accessed the CCTV footage. Let's put out the next big visual. We've accessed the CCTV footage around the same time at 3:15 a.m. In this CCTV footage, you can see the first responders running towards the spot of the incident. I'm also going to request if we can split our screens with the video that I have opened here right now. So that's CCTV footage of the first responders going to the scene, and this is another visual that has been put out by people on social media as well, because remember, of course, it was a crowded street and several people were there. What you can see in this in the streets is the clear aftermath of what has happened. We just in the initial few seconds saw some of the bodies, but I must also tell you that for example, the body that you see right now is of someone who's moving. So this is a person who's injured in the moment, who's been injured by the car, but you do see them moving, and you see the cops then running towards the crime scene, towards where the maximum damage has taken place. And of course, people also, after the initial shock of it all, coming together to help those who were injured, and unfortunately, of course, several people who were also killed in this terror attack. So these are the sort of dramatic and absolutely shocking visuals that have come out of the attack that took place in New Orleans. You can see what a large street this is, what a long street it was, and of course, several people were gathered on the 1st of January early morning, clearly after celebrating New Year's and bringing in 2025. People were still gathered, and we just, we have a terrorist who decided to run his truck over a bunch of innocent people who were simply out there celebrating the new year. So you can clearly see the aftermath of what the damage that has been caused by a single terrorist in a single truck. And with that, viewers, we will be slipping into a very quick break.